We're on Daf Yutes on the base, and up to Asaba Maima. Let's see if we can find the place. There's a Totzah D'Maskal Larvinu. So if you go more or less straight across, you'll see towards the end of that line, Asaba Maima. And the Gemara is continuing here to explain the Brisa. Maybe we should start with the Brisa so that we can have a sort of like an easier, smoother takeoff. The Brisa, which is a few lines earlier, records the Shita. No, that's not it. Actually, it's more than a few lines earlier. Just 1 second. Yeah, the Brisa is actually on the bottom of Daf Yutes Amud Aleph. Two lines up from the bottom. And let's just go over very simply the case of the Brisa. We're talking about two brothers. One died, and the other brother, we'll call him Shimon, was about to make a mimer in his Yevamot, but he didn't get a chance to do so. And then he died. So that's case number one. And there, the Brisa paskins that Harishona Yotza Mishum Eishes Achiv Shelo Haya Ba'olam V'Ashniya Ochel Letzis Omes Yabenis. All right, now we get to the case that's most relevant for us on the bottom of Daf Yutes Amud Aleph. Asa Ba Maima. So now Reuven dies, and he leaves his wife Sarah. Shimon does a maimar. Then Levi is born. And the Brisa offers another scenario, if you recall, that Levi is born and then Shimon subsequently does a maimar. Is Harishona Yotza Mishum Eishes Achiv Shelo Haya Ba'olam V'Ashniya Chol Letzis V'lo Misyabenis. So why is it that the Shniya means the wife of Shimon, the other wife of Shimon, which is Rivka, why doesn't she fall for Yibum? And the answer is because as a result of the Maimar of Shimon in Sarah, Eishes Reuven, Midrabbanan, we see her a little bit like a Saras Erev of Eishes Achiv Shelo Haya Ba'olam. And on that, Rav Shimon argues on the top of Yutes on the base with his famous Kal V'chomer. And he says, no, the Asa o Chalitzasa Shel Achas Behen Poteres Tzarasa. So it means that as far as Eishes Reuven is concerned, she is an Erevah to Levi because Levi is Lo Haya Ba'olam. However, if we want to focus on Rivka, the wife of Shimon, then he has two options. He can either be miyabim her, or he could give her chalitza. Whereas the Tanakama rejected the possibility of Yibum, Rabbi Shimon accepts the possibility of Yibum. And as a result of this, whether or not Levi implements Yibum with a bia or he gives her chalitza, now Sarah is completely ptura min hayibum u'min chalitza. So let's say the following. If Levi is choletz Rivka. So what's the status of Sarah Eishes Ruvain? She's completely ptura. Why? Says Rabbi Shimon Mimanavshach. If Maimar is a Kinyan Gamur, then she is Eishes Shimon, and therefore she falls even from Shimon. And once Shimon gives Chalitza to Rivka, therefore she, meaning Sarah, is Ptura. And if on the other hand, Maimar is not Kona, so then Sarah doesn't require Chalitza from Levi. And here we add the following statement. It says, Arehu Levi is kinolad kodam yibumo shel Shimon. You know, this is where the Gemara is contradicting or objecting to Rabbi Oshia's interpretation of Shimon, because what we're going to assume now is that if Shimon's Maimar is meaningless, then what we have here is Eishes Ruvain, who's an Erefa. So no matter how you slice the cake, if Maimar is valid as a Kinyan, then she falls to Yibum through Shimon, and therefore the Chalitza to Rivka patters up Sarah. If on the other hand, we don't recognize the validity of Maimar as a Kinyan, then she's Eishes Ruben, who's Eishes Achim Shalohay Bolam. Now, Cholatz Lebalas Maimar, which again, I don't know what the significance that is according to Rabbi Shimon, Lo Niftar at Sarah, because the Tzara Rivka falls through Shimon. Then we had a case of Knasa. So in other words, not that Shimon was miyavim her. So the first case was Shimon was thinking of miyavim her, but he died before he got a chance to was thinking of doing mimer, but he died before he did mimer. The second case is he did mimer. And the third case is that Shimon was miyavim. Just one second. I have a feeling it means he was miyabim before he married Rivka. Just one second. What am I talking about? He was miyabim Sarah. Right. He was miyabim Sarah, and he has another wife named Rivka. Then he dies. V'achak nolid lo ach. And now Levi is born. Okay. So again, I'm just going to fast forward for a moment, and then we'll come back to the other scenario. But the psak is shteim turis v'nachalitza v'nayib. Why is that? Because now Eishes Ruvain Sarah became the wife of Shimon. Shimon died. He left two wives for Yibum, and they are Rivka and Sarah. But Levi is Lohoya Ba'olama. So at this point, one second, why is I'm sorry, just give me a minute. I know you're ahead of me, but I have to catch up. Just a second. Oh, I'm sorry. Means that Levi died after Shimon's death. Okay. Oh, now let's go back to the other case. Shenolid lo ach the achach knosa umeis shteim p'turis v'nachalitza v'nayibum. So here's a case where Levi was born before Shimon's death. But what's the status of Eishes Ruvain? She's an erva of Eishes Ah. Now what happens is that Shimon is miyavim Sarah, and then Shimon dies. Just 1 second. So why then Pturos? I guess we have to introduce Tsaras Erva here, but 1 second. Where's the Tsaras Erva? Because Levi was born after Reuven died, and at that point, Sarah did not have Yibum, correct? So if Sarah didn't have Yibum, she becomes Eishes Ach. Now Shimon is miyavim her, and after Shimon's death, Sarah is an erva, and now Rivka becomes a Torah. Next case, Knosa v'nolad lo ach. The achikach mes. So 1 second, how is that different? Knosa. Here's the case where we're going to have machlokes Shimon and the Rabbanon. Meaning, before Levi was born, Shimon was miyavim Sarah Eishes Ruvain. Shteim p'turas min hachalitzim min hayibum. Divrei Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir reflects here the shita, the chachamim, that Sarah is an erva, even if Levi was born after the Yibum. But Reb Shimon Omer, Choel, Uba, Umitzah, Beheter, since when Levi was born, Shimon had already implemented Yibum. Is lo on the olav shachas piece. When Levi is born, Sarah was not an erev of Eishes Reuben. And therefore, Miyavim Leizim and Sheyirtza, Choletz Leizim and Sheyirtza, according to Reb Shimon, these are two wives of Shimon that fall to Levi for Yibum, and Levi will choose which one he wants to be Miyavim, and he could decide to be Choletz one of them, and that's the end of the story. So the Gemara now is going to disprove Rav Oshia. Above the Sefer, right? The last case where Shimon married Sarah and then Levi was born, it says Shteim Pturos min hachalitzim min hayibum. Laman Ketani Le, whose sheet does that reflect? It cannot reflect Rabbi Meir, because Michti Shalosh Shani Le Rabbi Meir, Bein Yibem V'achach Nolad, Bein Nolad V'achach Yibem. Is there a Vinu V'lisninu? El Olav Rabbi Shimon, Yibem V'achach Nolad Polik, Aval Nolad V'achach Yibem, Lo Polik. So when did Rabbi Shimon argue and disagree with Rabbi Meir? That's a case where Levi was born post facto, meaning after the Yibum of Shimon to Sarah. But in a case where at the moment of Levi's birth, there was not yet a Yibum of Shimon to Eishes Ruvain Sarah. In that case, even Rabbi Shimon would agree that there's no possibility of Yibum, because when Levi was born, the facts on the ground were that Sarah was Eishes Ruvain, and therefore she's an Erev of Eishes Ah. And this is the way that the Gemara finally disproves Rav Oshia and accepts, if I remember correctly, Rav Papa. Rav Papa says that Rabbi Shimon was only matter a case of Yibem v'achach Nolad. Now at this point, we can skip over to Asa Ba Maimon, which is where we wanted to start today. Okay, do we have the place? Also about Maimar. So now we're talking about a case where Shimon did a Maimar to Ashes Ruven, namely Sarah. The Akach Nolad Lo Ach. And then after the Maimar, Levi was born. Oshan Olal Ach. The Akach also a Maimar with Mace. And now we have the sheet of the Tanakama. Is Rishona Yotza Mishemeshis Ach Shelo Hoya Ba'olamo. And that means even in a case where Shimon did a Maimar, but we don't view Sarah as Ashes Shimon, but rather she's Ashes Achiv, meaning Ashes Ruvain Shelo Hoya Ba'olamo. Ushniach Choletzes V'lo Misyabemes. Let's just think on a Doraisa level, Ashes Shimon, meaning Rivka should fall for Yibum. Why are we excluding Yibum? That's going to be a Drabanan. Am I right? Let me just go over this. What's the Drabanan here? That since Shimon did a Maimar, Shniach Choletzes V'lo Misyabemes. Since Shimon did a Maimar, and we're going to recognize that Maimar to some extent, and that's going to make what's her name, Rivka into a tsaras error, all on the Drabanan level. Rav Shimon Omer biyoso chalitzot shel achas mehen poteres tsaros. Again, let's go over this. How do we understand Rav Shimon? The Ashes Ruvain is out of the picture. She's clearly an Erev of Ashes Ah. But now we're going to apply the Mimonif. If the Maimer is meaningless, then for sure Sarah does not create a Sarah's Erev situation with Rivka because Sarah is never married to Shimon. If, on the other hand, we recognize the Maimar, so then that doesn't have to have any negative impact on Rivka because then Shimon leaves two wives for Yibum. And in fact, Rabbi Shimon is going to allow Yibum in this case to Rivka. So Rabbi Shimon ahei kod. Because in this brisa there were two cases. There was also a Maimar v'achakach nolad, and then there was nolad v'achakach also Maimar. Ilema an nolad lo ach. The achakach also Maimar. Okay, so we're talking about a case where Levi was born before the Maimar of Shimon, and that's why Reb Shimon says that if Levi was Miyabim Acholitz Rivka, then Sarah is Ptura. Now, why is Sarah Ptura? And the answer is because we don't recognize that Maimar. Just 1 second. What did I just say? We don't recognize the Maimar. So, we don't recognize. Just a second. Why is Sarah Ptura? If we're going to assume at what? Maimar. Maimar. So now Shimon does a Maimar. Help me out here, guys. He did a Maimar. Why is she? Is what? Is if I view it as a kinyan, so then it's two wives that came from Shimon. That I understand. Now let's say it's not a kinyan. Oh, if it's not a kinyan, then it's Ashes Achshel Hoy Bolomo, it's an erva, and therefore she doesn't need even a chalitza. Talking about Sarah. In other words, he's saying here, Biyoso Chalitzos Shal Achas Men Poter Sarasa. Poter Sarasa means on the side in Rav Shimon's Suffolk that where he asked, it said maybe Mimer is a kinyan. Okay, fine. So now Shimon has two wives. And once he does, I'm talking Hebrews, Levi does Yibum or Chalitza to one of them, so the other one is Ptura. Because Mimer is a valid kinyan. If, on the other hand, Mimer is not a valid kinyan, so this is Ashes Ruvain who fell for Yibum to Shimon, to Levi, and it's Lohai Bolamo, so she does, no matter how you slice the cake, she does not need Chalitza or Yibum. Again, the reason why he used the word Poteres is because on that side that Mimer is a valid kinyan, then she needs to be potted up because she falls for Yibum through Shimon. So what's the Gemara's problem now? Amrit Nolad Sof Yibem Lo Polig Rabbi Shimon. Right now we're going with Rav Papa Shita in Rabbi Shimon. That if Levi was born before Shimon was miyavim her, then Rabbi Shimon admits that Ashes, Ruvain, Sarah will not fall for Yibum to Levi because when Levi was born, she was an Erev. Once she's an Erev, she remains an Erev. Okay, so now we have a problem. Because if we're talking about a case of Nolad, V'achkach Yibem, even Rav Shimon concedes that she's an Erva. I'm talking she, meaning Sarah is an Erva of Ashes. And therefore, on the side that we recognize and validate Maimar, oh, yeah, because on the side that we recognize the Mimer, then Rivka becomes a Sarah, correct? Because again, Rav Shimon agrees that once an Erva, always an Erva, if I can use that phrase, just as a catchphrase, meaning Nolad U'Besof Yibem, even Rav Shimon says, Eina Misya Bemes, she is Ashes, she's an Erva of Ashes Ah. Yeah? Oh, now, through Maimar, Rivka becomes a source Erva. So how could Rav Shimon go on record as saying that Shnia Choletzes, I'm sorry, that the V'yoso Choletzes Shel Shnia, Achas Mihen, is Poteres? Let me see what he says here. He says, Modeh, in the case of Nolad, Shesorin Eseres Li Olam Al Niv, right? Once and ever, always and ever. V'imkei Madua Muteres Lo Rivka, Eshes Shimon, or Shema Maimer Konen. Oh, I think we got it right. Sometimes we're lucky, we get it right. The al yodo nases, al yodo means through the validity of the mimer on that side. Nases rivka tsaras ashes akum shaloi v'lama sula b'yibum. Now we write the chain kosher, l'shema al sora, l'pota yidei mechalitz sora lo bekach bekach. Right. In other words, the language of Rav Shimon in this brisa cannot be tolerated, cannot be explained. Why? First of all, he's assuming biyasa o chalitzasa, which means that there has to be yibum. How are you, Bonita? How's it going? I can only recognize you on the top half of your face, not the other. What is it, a lamp? Oh my gosh, this is from, I remember. No?
I didn't recognize.
I'm so sorry to hear. Do you need anyone help you to find your way out?
Of course, I can find my way out.
No, you said the shots didn't help. You get me very nervous.
But I don't see.
You see from a distance, like fuzzy.
Yeah.
But you'll find the door.
I can find the door.
Okay, need to be well. You know, it's so amazing. My mother-in-law today is having eye surgery in New York. That's what we're trying to.
He's having eye surgery.
Eye surgery. For cataract.
Oh, I had it years ago.
Yeah.
Once you start, they don't stop.
Right. All right, bye-bye.
Fools all around me. 5 minutes away. Not 40.
Okay, be well. We hope to see you. Charlie will be back in about 10 days.
Huh?
Charlie is back in about 10 days, so maybe we'll see you then. Yeah, because my mother-in-law has surgery today. She could have stayed here and then Mitch would have done the surgery. I say she could have stayed here and Mitch would have done the surgery. He's an eye doctor. Yeah. Yeah. Really, it rips the heart. Yeah, I don't have to tell you, Mitch. You've seen this over and over again, I'm sure. In any event, so there's a double objection here to the language of Rabbi Shimon. First of all, he's assuming that Rivka needs either chalitza or yibum. That's not so, because Rivka is an Esha, is a tzaras erva. Why? Because clearly Sarah is an erva. There's no question about that. And through Maimar, on that side that we recognize Maimar, Rivka becomes tzaras erva. Furthermore, he says poteres tzarasa. What do you mean poteres tzarasa? Poteres tzarasa implies that Sarah fell for evil. She never fell for evil because the moment Levi was born, Sarah was an erva to Levi. Hello. So how are we going to salvage pshat in Rabbi Shimon here? Okay, now we get exciting. Now the going gets exciting. So what's the case here? The Maimer was done before Shimon was born. Okay, now before Levi was born. Now let's see if we can work this out. If the Maimer is Kone a Kinyan Gomer, then what? Then when Levi comes into the world, there's no Erev. Correct? That's what we said before. Mitzvah, what was the language there? He had a beautiful language there. Mitzvah behet. Mitzvah behet. But on the other hand, we can't allow ourselves the luxury of allowing Yibum for sorrow. Why not? Because perhaps the Maimar is not effective. Maimar is not effective. Mitzvah beheter. Then there's no mitzvah beheter. So then there's no mitzvah beheter. It's an error. But we remove the erva. We can't remove the erva because of Shimon's Maimar. Right, so she needs Yibum Chalitza on the tzad that the Maimar is Kohen. Correct? And why is there no problem? So if the so there's no error. Right? Mimonavshaft there's no error, right? If Mimer is valid, I apologize, Rabbi, say it takes me a while. This is the way my brain works. That's go through all the cases and it takes some time. So if Mimer is Kone, then we've already replaced the old issues of Ruvain with that of Shimon. So for sure, she's not an Erev at all. But she might be an Erev. Why? Because Maimer is not Kona. Not Kona. Correct? Also, but Maimer is not Kona. But as far as being a Tzoros Erev, if Maimer is not Kona, she's not a Tzoros. Oh, so that sounds good. It says Mimon of Shach, Muteres L'Rivka. Yeah, you always have to say two things, Muteres L'Rivka, but you also have to say that we need a pater of Sarah. Shari im Maimer Kona Kinim Gomer Af Sarah Muteres Lo, because Matzav Heter, which means that we mafkir the issues of Reuven. Is Kidin Yibem Losov Nola. Ukmochein Nifteres Sarbim. It's the language is a little strange. Nifteres Sarah o biyibum o bechalitzos Rivka. That's how I would read. You have this, Mitch, right? Yeah. Fine. So again, definitely, Sarah needs to get out of this thing, right? Either with yibum or chalitza of that, because she becomes an afil for yibum through Shimon. That's on the side that Maimer's called. The im Maimer in a Kodesh. So that means that Maimer is meaningless, and we never replace the error relationship to Sarah. Is there for Sarah P'tura, and there's no Sarah's error. Let's see if does he point that out. So, oh yeah, he says it. Muteres lo l'Rivka charei eina Sarasa klam. So if I'm not mistaken, this Ella that we're reading now is fine. There's some, when you learn a Gemara with the Shach, like these sugyas we're learning, you have to know what's a kasha, what's a teretz. So sometimes you lose the. So then Rab Shimon says, Chalatz lebailas maimar. Yeah, but I don't know, why would he give chali? Oh, let's see. Oh, I see. Because let's understand this now. If Maimer is Kona, then Sarah falls to Yibum through Shimon. So the chalitza of Levi to what's her name, Sarah is meaningful. Chalatz levailas Maimer, lo niftera Sarah. Think, because we're going now on the side that that Maimer is not Kona. If Maimer is not Kona, then Rivka falls for Yibum and does again. That's so pasuk. That's it. So obviously the chalitza to Sarah is meaningless. My timer, Bishum dahavit Sarah Vadai. Ubalas Maimer Safik. All right, he says it very fancy. He says it better than we did, but I think we explained. He ain't Safik not see Deva. Okay. Yosef Rav Menashe Bar Zvid Kamei de Rav Huna. The Yosef V'Ka'ama. My time of the Rabbi Shimon. Again, I don't know what are the ground rules here in this game. Let's go with Rav Papa's ground. So let's assume that Levi was born after Shimon was Miyabein Sarah. No. I'm sorry. We're not talking about Maimer anymore. Okay. Bar Chef Tarani. For the time being, they let us off the hook. We're talking about Yibum now. Okay? So what happens here? Shimon is Miyavim. Once Shimon is Miyavim Sarah, then the original Ishus to Ruvain is Paka, and now she falls to Yibum from Shimon to Levi. And there's no doubt about it. And now we're not in suffix situation. We're not talking about Maimon. We're talking about Yibum. So there's no question about it. It's 1,000% certain that Sarah falls to Yibum to Levi from Shimon. And Levi was alive when Shimon was alive. So therefore, Levi could be Meyavim Sarah. So this was the question of Rav Menashe to Rav Kahana, and he asked him, "My time." So Rav Kahana throws the ball back into his court. He says, "What do you mean, my time in the Rabbi Shimon? You're looking for an answer from Shimon's explanation from Shimon. He himself says, you know, Timer, Oil ba umitza'a beheter. Below omda olav sha'achas b'yisa." Okay? Ella says, Rav Menashe, I'm going to explain to you what bothers me. My time of the Rabbanon. Why the Rabbanon prohibit Yibum between Levi and Sarah? After all, doesn't it seem obvious that through the Yibum of Shimon, we now have a whole new ballgame, and she falls for Yibum from Shimon. So Levi never had in his lifetime a zika to Ashes Reuben. So what's the problem with being miyavim? Being miyavim? Being miyavim Sarah. On my craw, now I suppose we're going to get into the Rabbanon, but let's see. On my craw sounds like a rice. Ulakacha lo isha v'yivma. Adayin yibumim harishonim oleh. Wow, this is wild. I always give that example. If after Yibum they have a baby, who is it named after? So in this case, I was convinced that the baby was named after Shimon, but now I have questions that maybe the baby should be named after Reuven, because it says V'yidma Adayin Yibumim Harishonim Olel. Wow. So you know what? We have now a fundamental machlokes between Chachamim and Reb Shimon about the status of a woman who fell for Yibum twice, meaning she fell for Yibum because of Reuven's death. He was the original marriage partner of this girl, Sarah. And now she falls for Yibum through Shimon, who is Miyabem Sarah after the death of Reuven. Shimon dies, and you and I were thinking that Reuven is history, and that's certainly Rabbi Shimon's opinion, but the Chacham disagree. And they say Rabbi Shimon is still in the picture. Wait a second. Levi was lo haybolam. What does Gemara mean here? Daini bubu rishonim oleh. I guess le'isu. So what are we trying to establish here? That even after the Yibum of Shimon, nevertheless, Levi could not be miyabim Ashes Sarah, right? Sarah Ashes Reuben, because Sarah is still considered Ashes Reuben, even after the Yibum of Shimon. Adayin Yibum Rishonim Oleh. What that means? What do you mean Yibum Rishonim Oleh? Let me just see.
Says the original Hebrew status is still.
Yeah, I don't know how to understand it. I mean, how can you talk about the original Yibum status after Yibum was already fulfilled. Now she's a full-fledged Eishes Ish Shimon. I just want to see here on the next page, you have a few lines on the next page. He says, Mishum Acharei B'chlal, Kol Yevamash Ein Ani Koreba B'Shas Nefila, Yevamo Yovaleh Reya Sura Yovam Zeli Ol V'ach Le'achar Shetischadish Ba Nefila Shnia Mikoch Misa Shimon. Now, what does it mean? Ani Kori Ba B'Shas Nefila, blah, blah, blah. What do you mean B'Shas Nefila? Shas Nefila means what? The moment Levi is born? Yeah, but if you're going to talk about the moment that Shimon dies, that Nefila for you is coming from Shimon. That's not going to help me. I need a Nefila from Reuven, because what I'm trying to explain is why the Rabbanan exclude Yibum of Sarah, meaning Levi can't be Yab in Sarah. Obviously, if you're saying because Shas Nefila is Kevin Shani Lo Kori Bem Yavama Yavam Leo is Ain't Any Kori Ba Yavam Barei Asura Al Yavam Liolam. So where do we focus the Shas Nefila? He's talking about a Shas Nefila. And he quotes from Elchanan. This whole piece here on top is coming from Elchanan. Was killed in the Holocaust. So we talk in the 1940s. Sometimes you read the Masechet, you think for sure he's quoting either Rashi or Tosfos, or one of the Rishonim. But here it seems like he's quoting Rav Elchanan.
Well, is Sarah always, what I'm saying, Sarah's always thought of as the Obama.
Well, I wouldn't use the word sorry. We're focused only on sorry. Forget about Rivka.
Right.
If you introduce sorry, you're going to just confuse us.
Okay.
We're just talking about Sarah, correct? Sarah fell for Yibum to Shimon. Levi was not born. Shimon was Miyavim Sarah. Shimon dies. And now we're saying that when Levi is born, right before Shimon died, but after the Yibum, so according to the Shitas Chachamim against Reb Shimon is very smooth, what we call Glat. Because all Reb Shimon is saying is that once Shimon is Mekayim Yibum, is the story over. Let's close a fold, a tick. Here in this country, I don't know what it probably has a parallel in every country, but they call it Skirat HaTik. We close the tick of Reuven. Reuven is ancient history. Shimon is now the Lone Ranger. There's no one to be mityaches to except for Shimon. The one that I want to say name. There's an afila for Yibum. I don't know how to finish the sentence. From Reuven to whom? To Levi? I mean, Levi is Eishes Sofim Shaloi Olam. So I don't know what it means.
But it's like I changed my name, but I'm always alias my original name. So that's the same thing here. Even though she's changed her status to be Eishes Shimon, she's still considered she was Eishes Reuven. Boom, she became, but it's always there, and it's never fully removed. Always go back to that.
But how do you read this? Adayin nimsheches ba, what means in Sarah, zikas Reuven by Rishon. What do you mean zikas Reuven? Well, how can you talk about a zika to Reuven when Shimon married? I don't get it. Zika means a marriage relationship of some sort. But you can't tell me she's married to Reuven. Reuven is dead. You can call it a Zika, but Shimon was B'yavim. After Shimon's B'yavim, it's very strange to talk about his. And the plot goes thicker because he's quoting here on the top that Yevama she'enani kori ba b'shas nefila. What do you mean shas nefila? What is the shas nefila here? Nefila always means the moment of his death. Reuven Nebuch has been dead and buried for I don't know how many decades. So what are you talking about shas nefila? So I have two questions here. First of all, you can't talk about a nefila to Levi. That's for sure. It's Eishes Hatzalah. Secondly, even if you somehow overcome that hurdle, how can you call it a Shas Nefila when Reuven is long, long gone? Any Nefila for Yibum here is through Shimon because Shimon was Miyavim. So again, if you want to say your approach, Steve, maybe I can live with it that somehow she always remains under the status of Ashes Reuben. We can't rewrite history, we can't obliterate that fact. But to say Shas Nefila, this I don't understand, that there's a Zika to Reuven? What's this? Zika's Reuven and Nefila is perpetual for, added until the end of days? L'chora Nefila for Yibum means a mitzvah of Yibum. Well, that mitzvah of Yibum was already fulfilled by Shimon. And moreover, Levi wasn't even in the world at the time that mitzvah was. So Levi is now born. The Yibum is already a fact on the ground. And you're telling me that there's a Shas Nefila with a Zika to Reuben. And those words make no sense. You want to say that she never lost her status as, she's still cashing in the, her husband's social security. The estate, she's still getting a Yerusha from the estate of Reuven. Das Kenneth Herod, I could tolerate. But that there's a Zika to Reuven, and that there's an Nefila for you, that I don't know, it's not sinking in. And by the way, this is Shittas Chachamim, which sounds like it's the majority opinion. We're not talking about some far-flung. Reb Shimon is the dasno. The Gemara here is defending Reb Shimon and questioning the Chachamim. So the Gemara goes on. Ela Hodistan. He tells me here it's on Daf Lamed Ches. Liachar sheknasa hayavam harei hayavama he keishto l'chol davar. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That's sort of like, reverberates the statement that I hear from Reb Shimon here. Harei keishto l'chol davar. The Omer Rav Yossi Bar Chanina Melame. This is on Daf Lamed Tes. Here we're on Daf Chaf. In other words, once Yibum takes place, Chalitza is out of the orbit. We can only talk about get. We're talking about an HSE. Now, I'm not sure what we're going to read here, but I'm just anticipating that this certainly excludes Zikas Reuven. Do you follow what I'm saying, Rabosai? Because if the Zikas Reuven, she needs Chalitza. Right? Get is to Kedushin as Chalitza is to Zika. Just like get removes Kedushin and Ishus, so Zika is removed by Chalitza. Now, if you're telling me, according to Chachamim, that Reuven is long gone, there's still a Zika to Reuven, even after Shimon was Miyavim Sarah, then Sarah needs Chalitza to remove the Zika to Reuven. But the answer is no. She doesn't need Chalitza because she's an Eishes L'chol Davar. And if Shimon wants to terminate his Ishus with Sarah, he needs to give her a get. Let's see if he says this. Megarsha beget, Vayidei kach hini teres l'shuk, ein tzricha gam Chalitza, k'dei latir l'fisha al Yidei Yibum poka mimenu zikas balas hames v'chein im rotza hayavam harei machzira liachar shegirsha. You remember that if you give a woman chalitza, you can never remarry her. She becomes H'shazah. But in this case, she's not H'shazah anymore because the Ishus to Shimon replaces and undermines the Zika to Reuven. Ein omrim shemiachas shekfar is kaimu ba mitzvahs yibum harei asura ola b'yisrael eishes ach shalom b'makom mitzvah v'liachar sheyib harei ki ish l'chol davar kfar batu menu yisrael eishes ach v'olam. Awesome. In that case where Yavam was Megarish is Yibimto Nami Lema Fiyadma and Dain Yibum Rishonim Olel Tiboy Chalitza. More answer shiny Hassam Omar Kra ulekacha lo leisha. Even shelekacha nasis ki ishto lechol davar. Now, I don't understand, but that's exactly the case that we're dealing with here. Shimon was miyavim Sarah, Eshes, Reuven. So if you're going to tell me Arei Nasis Kishlo Chol Davar, why does according to Chachamim, why is Levi precluded from being miyavim Eshes Shimon? In other words, we're basically, we're going in circles here, holding our tail. Ihachi, Hacha nami hakasa rachmana v'yidma. So we have two different psukim, right? Let's go over this. We have a pasuk that says, one second. A pasuk that says v'yidma. One second, v'yidma. Right, that was the pasuk that we have v'yidma v'lakalo lisha. It goes the other way around. Ulakachalo lisha v'yidma. So we have like a reisha and a seif. So from the word v'yidma, we derive the conclusion that adayin yibum rishonim aleh. But from v'lakalo lisha, we derive that reishi kishto l'chol davar. Mora Isa. What do Mora Isa? He says Mora Isa lidrosh es ulekacha lehatira lashuk. Get below chalitza lidrosh es di'ibma lesarosa al ochiv shenolad liachar yibum. So the Gemara is saying here we have a right arm and a left arm, and they're working against each other. Meaning, the pasuk v'lakcha is teaching me that once the ibum takes place, he can break up the issues without chalitza by simply giving her a get. So that we derived from the pasuk v'lakcha. But the pasuk v'yidma is teaching me that even after Shimon is miyavim Sarah and dies, Levi is faced with a situation of Eshes Reuven, even despite, or Zikas Reuven would be more precise, but despite the evil that took place between Shimon and Sarah. So like it's like Shnei Ksuma Machishim said. Because if you're telling me Ulakacha means that the Ishus is now, the original Ishus is gone, the Zika is gone, and now we have a new Ishus, and that's why you only need get, you don't need Chalitza. But now you're telling me as far as the Ishus Ach, Shalohai Balom, meaning Levi, we still have the Ishus of Ruvain, despite the fact that Shiva was Miyam. How do I reconcile this theory? So Moretz is Mistabra, Shadi hatera, ushadi isura a isura. Mistaber lidrosh es a heter, that after Yibum takes place, there's no need to break up the issues with chalitza get is sufficient. Nasis ishal chol davar nishal kacha al eshes ach hamuteres lo be'ibum. Teres lo evil. We try to digest that. Lo evil. When the Torah says ulekacha, means that he could have been miyavim, or he was miyavim. the Isura Aisur, the Ilu, Daini, Boomer, Shonim, Olel, Ishmi Vama, Vidro Shal Ishes, Yoga, Ora Aspros, yes, no. What's going? Yeah, go ahead, Mitch.
No, I mean, I think our focus. We're not saying, we're not really saying that Paka Rishona. Just as far as the whole world is concerned, Paka Rishona, but not as far as Lady. Somehow he's different. I mean, some, just that not everybody says that, some people.
Yeah, we're going quick to our bonnet. Shimon is, yeah. Let me digest what you say. What it says.
Whether it's the first in the marriage to Shema, okay, the original,
Let me say it the way I want to say it, and let's see if we're both saying the same thing. I think maybe we're both saying the same thing, but you know, my mind, my brainwaves are working this way. I want to say like this. The Gemara, in explaining the Rabbanan, is climbing up to like an abstract world of what I call Gavra. There's one Gavra who, as far as Yibum in this particular case, is a Gavra di Isura. He is prevented from Yibum. This is all an abstract level, right? And the other Gavra is included in it. So you have two brothers. After the oldest brother died, you have two brothers. We're going to classify one brother as a Gavra de Hetera. That's Shimon. We're going to classify the other brother, Levi, as a Gavra de Isura, because he was Lo Hayab Olamo of Reuven. And we're going to work with abstract definitions in order to reconcile what seems to be a stira. One pasuk says that once Yibum takes place, lehetera. Lehetera means forget about the zika of the rishon. It doesn't generate an iser that requires chalitza. There's no yimam l'shuk, etc., etc. Another pasuk seems to indicate that even after Yibum takes place, what was the language of the Gemara? Adayin. Let me just get the language. Adayin yibumim harishonim alel. That's an oath, because yibumim harishonim means that the zika, even after Yibum takes place, the zika, the original brother that died, the first brother that died, meaning Reuven, is still somewhere out there generating Yisur. So now I have to understand. One pasuk indicates that once Yibum takes place, there's no chalit. Even if he divorces her, he doesn't have to break up the issues with chalitza. That pasuk is a mati and tells you don't need chalitza because the original zika of Reuven is gone. The other pasuk says that adayin yibum rishonim oleh, you require chalitza as a result of the original marriage to Reuven. And that pasuk is an osif. So I have one pasuk that's matir and alleviates you of the requirement of chalitza. Another pasuk is an oser and requires and generates a requirement of chalitza. And her status vis-a-vis the shuk remains a Yevamot shuk as a result of the original list. So how can I reconcile this? Is the original ishus an oser or it's gone, and therefore the pasuk is coming to matter and alleviate the requirement of chalitza? So the answer is we're going to climb up to the abstract world, and we're going to look at the two gavras. Shimon and Levi, so to speak. As far as Shimon is concerned, he's a Gavra who's included in Yibum. In other words, he can be matir the erva of Eishes Ach in a case of Yibum. Levi could never be matir the Yisur Eishes Ach, the erva of Eishes Ach, because as far as Reuven is concerned, he's excluded from Yibum. So she's a pure Eishes Ach. Now, when I have to plug in these two drushas, these two Yalfusos, I'm going to use one Yalfusa Lahete to alleviate her requirement of Chalitza and her status as a Yevamot Ashuk through Zika, through Shimon, because he's a Gavra Mutabi. Now, what do we say? We're saying that the status of Sarah such that she doesn't need Chalitza because that Zika that would have generated Chalitza was removed by a Gavra who has a heter on Eishes Achim, meaning has a mitzvah of Yibum to remove the Zika. But what are we going to do with another pasuk? The other pasuk seems to say that even after Yibum, there still is an Oser that requires Chalitza. There's still some vestige of Zika. We're going to have to use that vis-a-vis another Gavra who never was in the Parsha of Yibum, never had a possibility of being marked to the Erev of Eishes Ach, and that's going to be Levi. And what is that? And what is the Torah telling me now? So now Shimon is Niyabin Sarah Eishes Reuven. Now Shimon dies, and Sarah Eishes Reuven falls to Levi. And now we're going to say that Sarah's status vis-a-vis Levi was such that there would never have been a heter. So there's at least a basis for saying that the Iser Erev of Eishes Ach still remains, because we have a pasuk that says that somehow the Eishes Ach remains, and there's some vestige to the original Zika. So you might ask, so why not be matir that through Chalitza? And you can't be matir through Chalitza because she's an Eishes Ach Shelo Olam. So there's no possibility of Chalitza. Is that more or less what Mitch would you had in mind?
Or was it really that sophisticated?
I'm not sure if mine is so sophisticated, but see, I'm trying to circumvent what I consider a major problem in explaining the Chachamim. I mean, how can you say the Zikas Reuven, and that's why Levi cannot pick up the Yibum when Shimon dies after Shimon was Biyamim Sarah. And we say, no, Adayin Yibum Rishonim Oleh. So what's the Adayin? So the Adayin Rishum Oleh means that the Torah is saying some sort of an Isur, which is generated by, if you go back to its original source, by the Zika to Reuven. Again, the Zika to Reuven is a non-entity because Shimon was already Biyamim. And Nasis Kishel Chol Dov. But the Torah is indicating a certain Isur that results from the original Zikas Yibum of Reuven. So if there is a drasha to teach me on the Isur, I have to find a Gavra who is excluded from Yibum, and therefore it makes sense that he's the one that the Torah is telling me is going to be impacted by the vestige, the vestige of Zikas Reuven. Okay, that's the best I can do. where are we up to for tomorrow? I think we got up to Ula Rabbi Shimon. Is that correct? Can you double check me on that? Ula Rabbi Shimon. Okay.